All right, everybody, we are live here with the man, the myth, the legend himself. Dan Ives is here. He was gracious enough to take time out of his busy schedule and give me about 30 minutes to discuss everything going on in the stock market. Dan, thank you for being here.
No, thanks. Great to be here. And look, I like that shirt. I feel like that's an impressive shirt that you brought out.
You're the inspiration for this. You with
I
your
like
style and your chic, you
it's
know?
good, man. No, seriously. No, but it's great talking to you. And just I think just an important time. Even if you think about since the last time we spoke, I think like institutional interest and recognition of Palantir is I'd say pretty quickly changing.
Yeah, I think your call in July was a turning point for a lot of people to start thinking of it seriously, and I think we saw, given the run up, kind of what happened. Before we get into everything, I wanted to ask you this question, Dan, because I've been thinking about this for a long time. To me and to my Market Open stream and to the people that follow sort of the retail investing community, you are legitimately like a rock star to us, right? In terms of, we care about your opinion, we care about your thoughts, your perspectives. There's a lot of analysts out there on CNBC, but you and like Tom Lee, at least in my community, like, we want to hear from you. We are not going to skip the video when they post it for you. And your videos, I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, CNBC gets hundreds of thousands of views when you're on their channel. How do you feel personally? I mean, you've worked your entire life in tech investing. You've been doing this for a couple of decades. Like, do you really feel you're in your prime as a tech analyst that is actually in your zone doing your thing in this industry?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I think essentially what's happened is like you go through periods where from a tech perspective, there's no like breakthrough technologies. In other words,
Right.
like you're essentially calling quarters, valuations, M&A or whatever it may be. I do think like we are going into what I view, I mean, I've talked in 1995 period, like it is just a transformational tech period. So at least personally, it's as excited as I've been in this role in many years because
Right.
but you're not going to see the technologies from your 10th floor on Park Avenue. You got to be out there seeing. That's why 2.5 3 million air miles, like that's enabled us to see what's out there, whether it's in Asia or Europe or South America or US, just because I feel like now that's how you could separate yourself as an analyst
Mm.
in terms of trying to identify the themes that maybe others don't. And obviously, like from a macro perspective, Tom's, in my opinion, best out there.
So in the 90s, it was like the internet and you were in that mix. Is that
Yep.
the same vibe you're getting right now, which is why you're traveling so much?
But it's the same vibe. But the difference with that vibe versus this, that was more, I'm calling this just like all hype, but it was about, okay, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
Here's how we're going to disintermediate FedEx. I'm just giving examples like e-commerce. Now, the technology's here.
Right.
It's not about what we're going to do. From an innovation perspective, I think it's probably the most innovative time that we've ever been through when you think about AI, what's happening, cloud, cybersecurity on the consumer e-commerce side. And I think in AI, I think like vast majority still not just underestimate, but I think misunderstand.
Mm.
And I just go back to I just go back to like NVIDIA, Godfather of AI, Jensen. It starts there. Look what Microsoft's seeing in Copilot.
Yep.
Look what Jassy's seeing in AWS. Look at what Google's seeing. Who's the purest play scale platform out there? Palantir, in my opinion. And I think the big misunderstanding or the big, maybe the way it was labeled, it's like, okay, like government business, you go back to everything Cart built. Street's not going to put a multiple on that because government business, by definition, lumpy, budgets could be cut. So the street is never going to pay up for what I'll call like government business.
Right.
But now an enterprise, and we were just at a AIB customer conference a month ago, you're seeing it. No one's doing a full-scale AI deployment where Palantir is not significantly involved in the bake-off or seat at the table.
Right. So I mean, let's get into Palantir then. I mean, obviously you called $25 price target in around July. Stock fell a little bit. Then obviously the past couple months has been pretty amazing. Not only just for the stock, but the company. I think that Q3 earnings, a lot of people were surprised what's going on here. Let me ask you this question to start. They're not growing like a typical SaaS company grows in terms of 35, 40% year over year, but they're profitable and S&P 500 looks like it's around the corner. Do you think they made the right move there? And do you think they kind of had to make that move because they were building out a big enterprise platform that just wasn't ready to scale at 30% year over
They
year?
had to, it's almost like, it's almost similar in a way. I wouldn't say what Zuckerberg's done Meta. It was like, okay, we have to like change, cut, focus.
Right.
It's a big, if you really, it's different, but it's similar in a lot of ways. It was like read the room, understand what you need to do, especially from an institutional investor perspective, SMB inclusion. And then look, once you start proving it, then investors, they'll give you more rope and
Yeah.
be like, okay, I understand maybe pushing out some of the targets or whatever from a margin perspective, but show it to me. And I think that was just a phenomenal strategic move that they've made.
Yeah. I think it was a turning point for them as well, especially when investors weren't expecting profitability until 2025.
Yeah.
And, Karp kind of said, actually, we've got something up our sleeve. Israel and Hamas, you were on Bloomberg a couple of weeks ago saying Palantir could be the eyes and ears of Israel. Is there any insight from the people you've talked to saying that there's something there? Or do you just think that geopolitically the world we're going into is going to make Palantir a little bit more important in situations like that?
It's just, I mean, it's just unfortunately, it's the nature of this geopolitical landscape. Like if you look at what's happening from an AI perspective, Palantir is more and more going to be front and center, right? And I think the one thing I would note is that when you look at what's happened on government and you look at what they've done within US, within Israel, at least from a federal perspective, they're not getting the enterprise deal flow opportunities if it's not for that.
Right.
So I just continue like because eventually how I see it all playing out is it's almost going to be a sum of the parts valuation where you're going to put a lower multiple on the government business, and you're going to put a SaaS higher multiple on the enterprise business. So eventually that's how I see Palantir playing out from a valuation, no different than Apple services hardware, AWS e-commerce for Amazon, Microsoft cloud, non-cloud. Like that's why, like from a valuation perspective, some will look at it and be like, okay, they're not, like you said, they're not showing that growth.
300 PE, 25 times price of sales. People will say it's overvalued.
But it masks the growth. You
Right.
you can't look at just the growth. You have to parse out what's going to be AIP, what's going to be enterprise. The margins on that business are dramatically different than government.
Right.
So that's how I kind of see it playing. I'll be Palantir. I'll be with the team in a few weeks. Out in West Coast, and I think it's one of those things where they get it. Like that's the other thing. Like I feel sometimes there's companies where, and I get carp, like some will obviously don't like some of the style, but at the end of the day, like that's the nature of Palantir. You cannot argue their success. Back's always been against the wall, and they've come through. But now I think it's a management team that, from a Wall Street perspective, is much more in tuned to what they need to do.
You said you spoke to a lot of CIOs in the summer, and a lot of them recently were saying 8 to 10% of AI budgets are going to be allocated next of budgets in general are going to be allocated to AI spend next year. Is that another reason you're excited for Palantir? Because they're not going to get all that 8%, but that's like hundreds of billions of dollars that are going.
Because my view is like, okay, like how do you play? So let's just talk about like in AI, first derivative, second, third, fourth.
Right.
First derivative, New York City cab
NVIDIA.
driver, NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Microsoft, the Uber driver, Lyft. Who's second, third, fourth derivative? Palantir, Manga, Snow. You could argue the install base players, the Salesforces, the Adobes, the Oracle.
Right.
Now someone would be like, "What? Those aren't a no." You can't. You have to view it as massive install bases, selling AI into it. So in order to play those themes, Palantir, that's why I view it, Messi of AI, the golden child, in terms of what I view as the purest play way.
I love how you come up with these names too. It's just everyone loves it so much.
But you know, no,
Everyone loves it.
but also part of it, it's a way to kind of label it. Like in other words, a lot of times, like, what's Palantir? You're like, look, like they're the Messi of AI. Some be like,
Yeah.
like I Ronaldo, whatever. But the point is, they're just at the tip of discovering this opportunity. That to me is what makes it so exciting. And like I've told you, like I think retail was way ahead of institutional in terms of recognizing like where the path was going.
Yeah. No, and I think that's why you started talking to us back in the summer because
Yeah.
I mean we were on this stock when it was $6-7,
No,
and
I know.
you're like this valuation doesn't make sense, and there's so much here, and part of Carp's mystique got people excited and got people to get into it. Let me ask you one last question on Palantir here. I don't think you've ever gotten this question before. Let's give it 15 years. Do you think Palantir is mentioned in the same names of Fang? Do you think it's in the big
Look,
tech category?
I wouldn't say that necessarily on that level. I view it as almost there's going to be another level.
Right.
What I view as like the disruptors.
Right.
So I think it gets labeled with a Zscaler, a
Salesforce.
Mongo.
Yeah.
It gets labeled in, especially on the disruptor category, a Snowflake, because that's really, what's really starting to happen now is like they're proving themselves as a disruptor.
Right. Yeah, and it's not easy disrupting big tech. So trying to take some dollars out of those guys, that is a tough situation to absolutely
But
be in.
that's why if you're a CIO today and you're doing a large scale AI deployment, that you have to have them in the bake off and or front and center.
Right. Right. Okay, let's do Tesla. Cybertruck is out. It's officially here. 4 years in the making. Market didn't really like the Cybertruck announcement as per the stock today, but the market
That's
is the
typical
market.
selling the news. Exactly.
Let's start off with this. Prices, were you happy with that? And were you happy with, I guess, the overall model that you saw in terms of how fast it is, how strong it is, all that stuff?
Look, I mean, the specs all hit. And actually, the speed of 2.6 was even ahead. I think the important thing is just price points. Now, look, so forget the Cyber Beast at 100K, but let's just talk about the 80K.
80K,
80K
yep.
after tax credit, we'll call it low 70s. I do believe it's scale that comes down below 70. In other words, as they're able to scale, price does come down.
Yep.
And then everyone will be like, oh, well, they promised 4 years ago 40. What does that mean? Like, what was a movie ticket in 19? I disagree with that argument. And also, like, look, they're probably going to lose 40,000 initially per vehicle. But then it scales into 25 and it's profitable. And the reason I think it's so important, it moves the needle as another growth driver. It shows that they could go outside, produce something many in the industry said you couldn't do at scale. Now they're going to do it. Like when you walk through Austin, I mean, what they've done there, it's unmatched.
Right.
So I think that is what's so important here. And it always goes back to like with Tesla, labeling them just a car company or an auto company. It's saying Djokovic's just a tennis player. Tiger's just a golfer, right? Like, Steph's just a basketball player. And I just think that's the misnomer. And actually, look what's happened in Detroit. They're scaling back because of UAW and let's call it like more of a recognition, some sort of hybrid type model. Tesla's doubling down on EV.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I mean, when I saw that Cybertruck as well, it was just like it was a beast of nature. You couldn't imagine they could actually be able to produce it. So when people are complaining that, oh, it's a little bit more expensive, it doesn't have as much mileage, it's like the engineering problem that they were able to fix after 4 years. It's not going to be perfect, but the fact that he even got it out there is incredible to look at. Do you think the car is ugly?
Look, I view it as like it's a Mad Max design. I get some are gonna not like it,
Hmm.
but they tried to do something different here and just go back to like why three people laughed initially when those came out.
Yeah, they
You're
did.
not laughing now, and you're going on the 101. One of every two cars is a Tesla. So it's one where just like Cook, just like Nadella, to count them out is always, I think that's just been the wrong bet with Musk. And that's sort of our view is that, like, take away all the noise, production wise, it's extremely impressive what they've done here.
You were on a panel, I think about 3 days ago or a week ago on CNBC, and it was a pretty bearish panel on Tesla. You were the one bull there. The bears argument was valuation. Your argument was you guys
Mhm.
aren't seeing the full picture. Is that still how you feel, that the full picture, the bears just really can't grapple with why the market's giving it the premium?
Well, look, first of all, like a lot of bears, like they're super smart. Like it's not like their argument is very, and I've talked about I like to engage in bears,
Yep.
regardless of what the stock is. Sometimes I do bull bear debates like for that investors come to
Yep.
because you need to understand the other side. You can't just be like, nah. You need to understand the bear argument. The bear argument with Tesla is okay, like they've hit their peak, pricing's coming down. You're not going to pay up for a multiple where margins are coming down. Now I get that argument.
Right.
My argument is margins start to flatten and they trough out and expand. I think targets when you go into next year, I think you can hit 35% ish type growth. And then you look at the next phase of the growth story that starts to take hold. In other words, like this is one where you have to view it in a 10-15 year scale where we're probably 3 years into what I view as like almost like a 10-year growth story. That's sort of our view of Tesla. But look, Tesla, like as a bear, it's like someone being a hater on like the Eagles,
Hmm.
despite Jalen Hurts being a goat. And look, and I'm a Giant fan. I'm a Giant fan. So,
Me too.
but the point is like, okay, you could hate, and I get it, clouds, but you cannot deny.
Correct.
And I think that's my view of Tesla. It's the view of Palantir. It's the view of Microsoft. It's the view of Apple. It's the view of Mongo. It's the view, like it's one where if you just sit there and focus on valuation, you've missed every transformational historical tech name the last 20 years.
Last quick question on Tesla. Elon, New York Times conference, tells advertisers to
Yeah.
GFY. I thought as a 26-year-old entrepreneur, it was pretty epic that he was fighting for free speech. That was kind of my perspective. And I think he has a plan to figure out how to monetize without it. As as someone who's been very bullish on Tesla for a long time, did you, as a shareholder, feel that's not the best for the
It's
company,
one
or
of
how are
those
you?
things like it would be like in junior high, like some kid saying like, running for president, be like, we're gonna stop eighth period
Homework.
and we're gonna
Yeah.
get like no homework. Yeah, he's the bet. And then he gets called to principal's office and his parents come. You're like, okay, so like for that minute, it felt epic. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but
Yep.
then the
Yep.
reality. See, look, the problem is like when you and I'm the biggest Musk fan as a
Mhm.
visionary. But when you're selling products to mass market, this is just factual. You don't want to alienate anyone in there. And the problem from the advertiser perspective, I don't view that it's like raw, like some talk like brand deterioration. I don't view brand deterioration. The biggest thing is just X it's like that constant, just like frustrating cycle
Right.
where because what I didn't want, to me, the biggest thing was, okay, now it's going to overshadow Cybertruck. See,
Right.
like that's the biggest frustration, like as an investor,
Right. Yeah, that is fair. And a lot
But
of
I
people
get, but
hold the
look,
same view.
Musk is going to go the beat of a different drum. He's not, he doesn't report to anyone. It's how he does it. But it's like I think it's just people accept it or they don't like it, and you move on.
All right, Microsoft. You've been very bullish on this name for a long time. Let me ask you a funny little question here. Do you think in your heart of hearts, like really in the depths of your soul, that Satya Nadella planned this whole OpenAI Sam
Never.
Altman nonsense to be able to get a board seat on OpenAI? Is there
Ne-
any part
like
of you?
zero, like zero, actually zero. It's not even 1-0. Nadella's sitting there at his desk, gets the call about the four board members from the Ringling Brothers board, Barnum Valley Circus, trying to take down $90 billion company, backing the grandmaster chess wizard, legend, top of Mount Everest, Nadella, into a corner. And it just goes back to like Nadella 4 steps ahead. They're at the kids' table playing checkers. He comes in, needed to resolve. Because look, it's like it speaks to like the concern with like corporate governance,
Mm,
what could happen here. But the last thing that's taken down the lotto ticket of Altman being the golden child and AI are for board members that are going to ruin this, whether it was a political or personal or whatever. That
right.
was not going to happen. Now you got Brett Taylor, Sumner's, adults now finally at the table.
Where were you? What were your raw thoughts when you saw it?
I mean, the raw thoughts, like when I first heard it, to me, it was like a potential nightmare, just because understanding the governance issue there, that there was nothing that you can actually do. If
Right.
Altman was out, my initial biggest fear was like the F5, whatever you want to call it, the red alert. Altman leaves, gets kicked out, goes to Amazon, Google, or some other thing outside of Microsoft. That's a nightmare scenario. I mean, Altman out of OpenAI, Microsoft, I could argue that was going to take out, like we talked about, 8-10% stock could have been down. I mean, it's that
No.
important. So when all of a sudden at 3 a.m, Microsoft, in a move that will legitimate, like for ages, they'll talk about this. Nadell was like, okay, you think this guy from Twitch is coming in? Enjoy it. Enjoy the next 2 hours. Bam. I mean, it was just unreal.
Yeah, what was unreal to me is that the company is worth, 86, 90 billion. They're raising a 3x the valuation from last year. And a lot of those employees are going to be set up for life. And because of whatever governance reason the board had, all of that goes to shit. And the fact that they brought him back to me was just that there was never an initial reason to do this outside of ideological agendas.
But
Right.
that's the whole, and then everyone always wants to like focus on like, oh, could there be some more sinister? The reality is like, look, all the time in private company, anyone that's watching this, like everyone's been in experiences, private, public, things happen, personal issues. But I mean, it could have just been very, very, very disastrous. But ironically, it ends up better.
Helping
I mean,
Microsoft. Right.
that's what's amazing with Satya. What's unbelievable with him is he's 3 steps ahead. And I know a lot of people say like they don't like always using the chess checkers. And again, if you have some new ones, let me know. Shoot me over Twitter or link if you have some good metaphors. But he's always he's just always ahead in turn. Like everyone's thinking here, he's thinking here.
Right. We had a Brad Altimer from Altimer Capital yesterday say Google's going to be okay, but they're definitely not going to maintain the dominance they've had in search because of things like large language
Yeah.
models and ChatGPT. More broadly, do you see LLMs really disrupting the traditional way that Google has operated, or do you think it's just going to be incorporated into their services and get better?
I'm not worried about Google and search. I mean, to me, it like the street fight, the backyard brawl, it's all in cloud.
Right.
Like, and actually, we are like initially when everything started, like like when we started to do work, it was really like October last year. Understanding the breakthroughs in AI, could happen, OpenAI. When Microsoft originally did the deal, everyone's like, okay, search, Bing, this could actually no, but that was
That's
table
child's
stakes.
play.
It's all
Yeah.
enterprise. What they're focused on Google, it's Kurian, it's the team, it's Sundar, it's focused on enterprise, focused on GCP. That's the opportunity because we've talked about Microsoft. For every $100 of cloud spend, there's an incremental 35 to 40 of AI spend. See,
Mm,
that's why like it goes back to like Microsoft. Remember, many people they hated 50, despised it 100, 150, it's great, 200, you keep going on. And they had 380, it's insane. And then they'll send you the typical email or text. Let's see how this looks in 6 months, how this is going to age or whatever,
right.
whatever the term is. They don't, they're miscalculating the massive opportunity for AI within Microsoft. Because I could argue within Microsoft, you could argue that a trillion of incremental value will be driven by AI and that's why so many of these names, if you look at Oracle, Salesforce, Adobe. Now, okay, let's just take like a hater glass half empty. Legacy tech, they're not AI plate. Yeah, but they have install bases.
Right.
That's you monetize even 10-20% of that. And if you and then just even pull it back to Palantir. Palantir, it's basically now just trying to take a white space enterprise market, monetize it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of AI consumers are feeling some of the benefits of it, but the money is going to be made in the enterprise. I mean, that's really where they're putting it.
Enterprise is 10, 15x the opportunity of consumer.
So you wouldn't invest in or you wouldn't be doing a lot of research on a consumer play like Snapchat that's using AI. You wouldn't
Look,
get excited for
I
those.
mean, I'm not saying that like those aren't benefits, Meta benefits, Google. I mean, of course, you're gonna have benefits from an AI consumer, but the golden goose, where the market is, it's on enterprise.
Right. Right.
That's the foot. I mean, that's like that's where the gold is from an
Right.
enterprise because it's data driven.
Yeah. And I think that was the thesis on Palantir is that if data is the new oil and every enterprise has trillions of amounts of data that they need to make sense of, Palantir doesn't need to win the whole market. But if they can win some of it, then obviously it can disrupt
And
massively.
it's use case driven too. Um, because even if you think now, like the use cases, actuaries from insurance,
Mm-hmm.
banks, healthcare,
Oh, healthcare.
government.
Goodness
No,
gracious.
see, so the difference is like beginning of the year, you had 10, 15 use cases. Now, 80 and 90 that we've seen.
In the summer on Twitter Spaces, I asked you about some of the political backlash Palantir was getting, and you were kind of just like, "Look, it's a thing. It's been part of their culture, and hopefully they'll get through it." They got the NHS contract, $480 million from the UK. They had a lot of backlash for it, but they landed the deal. Any thoughts on them actually able to get these deals in the
It
midst of?
goes back to what we talked about, like backlash, whether it's in Europe, Beltway. You could talk. I get it, but that was a much different scenario 3, 4, 5 years ago than it is today.
Yep.
The perception of Palantir is much different. Like if you go back to like Black Ops, the car, just going back to like, the obviously like a lot of people in the Palantir community have like battled, but it's a different perception, right? Like now, like Carp, like he's coming into boards, public company, CIO. They're doing CIO summits. It's like a different company.
Absolutely. Thank you, 461 people, for being here. Dan, last 2 questions on Apple. This Vision Pro, do you think it's actually going to be Tim Cook's legacy? Do you think it's the next leg of growth, or what do you see
think
for that?
it plants the seed for eventually what's going to be an AI app store for Apple.
You were the first person that mentioned this. What is an AI app store? What do you
So
mean
there's
by
going
this?
to be a separate app. So right now, if you're a developer, what are you doing? AI apps. That's right now. It's a battle for developers.
Right.
So you're going to have, whether it's fitness, whether it's health, whether it's any
Gaming.
sort of AI driven consumer app, there's going to be a separate app store, a separate category of AI apps. They're going to be built on the ecosystem. Some of those could even parlay into AR, VR. That's going to be in terms of a new form factor. It's going to be a whole nother opportunity for Apple to monetize the developer and the services community. And it goes back to like services, we believe alone is worth 1.4 to 1.5 trillion.
That's correct. Yeah. So you think the money's not even really on the margin of the Vision Pro? The money is making that an ecosystem where people are actually using it, so that developers on the back end do monetize.
And right now, Vision Pro is, and Gene, good friends talk that as well. Like Vision Pro is about developers 3,500.
Right.
For consumers, it's 2-3 years from now when that's $1,200.
Correct.
So it's that's another perception. I'm like, 3,500. Who's gonna? No, it's focused on developers building apps on the ecosystem on Apple, and ultimately that's gonna be monetized.
Right. All right.
So, no,
this is awesome, man.
Great to be here, and thanks everyone for joining. Enjoy weekend. A lot of football, college playoffs. Oof. Saturday night's gonna be a big one if you're a college or football fan.
Let me hit you with one last question. Do you think you have the best job in the world? You get to travel, talk about tech, be on TV. Like, do you think that's just like did you ever imagine 10-year-old Dan would be doing this at this
I know,
stage?
but look, the one thing is like a lot of people don't realize, like, dude, it's like, look, you gotta work hard. Like, travel seems great, but it's like when you're away, 50-60% of the time, stuck in some random airport in some country.
Yeah.
It's not. So it just, look, it comes with it. But again, it's like everything's always like grass is always greener. It's, look, what I like, I enjoy it, but I think it speaks to like, you just have to enjoy what you do, right? I feel like, and it's engaging with like the retail community has been, something that I truly enjoy.
Yeah, we got a lot of love in the chat. Kelly here says we love you. A bunch of people saying thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan. And a great interview. Thank you, Dan. It means a lot to me.
And congrats to you and just everything you guys have done. You built it from ground up, and again, this whole new shirt thing. This could be a whole style thing. Maybe you take this into a fashion line. Like, you just never know where this thing could go.
You never know. Thank you, Dan. It means the world to me. Have a great weekend. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.